The blood-red sun scorched the dusty streets of Galesburg, Illinois, as Beth Mitchell stood shaking on the auction block, her trembling fingers clutching those of her two younger sisters like precious lifelines in the savage current of their fate. The year was 1877, and the Mitchell sisters had never imagined their lives would come to this display like cattle before a crowd of leering men after their father's sudden death left them with nothing but his crushing debts. Beth, at 22, had spent the past 5 years raising her sisters after their mother's passing. Emma, 19, possessed a gentle spirit and a talent for healing, while Sarah, 18, had their mother's fiery temperament and stubborn determination. "Next up, the Mitchell girls," announced the auctioneer, a portly man with yellowing teeth and breath that reeked of whiskey even at this early hour, being sold to cover their late father's debts. Fine stock, all three, young, healthy, and trained in household duties. Starting bid at $50 for the eldest. Beth felt her stomach twist as men began calling out prices. She squeezed her sister's hands tighter, knowing what awaited them: separation, servitude, or worse. Emma sobbed quietly beside her while Sarah's jaw was set in defiance, though tears glistened in her eyes. $75, called a man with a face like weathered leather and hands that looked as though they could snap a person's neck without effort. $80, countered another, eyeing Emma with a predatory gaze that made Beth step protectively in front of her sister. The bidding continued, the prices rising for each sister separately. Beth felt dizzy with fear, knowing that within minutes, they would be torn apart forever. The three Mitchell girls who had promised their dying mother they would always stay together. $300. The voice cut through the clamor, deep and commanding. The crowd parted as a tall figure stepped forward. Sunlight glinted off the silver star pinned to his vest, the town marshal. Beth had seen him around Galesburg but never spoken to him. Grant McAllister was his name, a man whose reputation preceded him, fair but firm, respected by decent folk and feared by outlaws. The auctioneer looked surprised. $300 for which one, Marshal? All three, Marshal McAllister said firmly. His eyes, the color of a summer storm, locked with Beth's for a moment. I'll take all three and keep them together. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer frowned. Marshal, these girls are being sold individually to settle the debt. I said $300 for all three, the marshal repeated, his hand resting casually near the pistol on his hip. That's more than the debt owed. You can check the records. The auctioneer hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. $300 going once, going twice. Sold to Marshal Grant McAllister. Relief flooded Beth's body with such force that her knees nearly buckled. Emma let out a choked sob, while Sarah's grip on Beth's hand loosened slightly. As the sisters were led down from the auction block, Beth's mind raced with questions. What would this man want with three young women? Even if he was the marshal, men rarely did anything without expecting something in return. Marshal McAllister stood waiting for them, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the morning sun. Up close, Beth could see the fine lines around his eyes and mouth, a man in his early 30s, perhaps. His dark brown hair was neatly trimmed beneath his hat, and despite the summer heat, he appeared coolly composed. Miss Mitchell, he said, addressing Beth directly, I understand you and your sisters have had a difficult time since your father's passing. Beth lifted her chin, determined not to show weakness. Yes, sir. We're grateful for your intervention, but I must ask, why would you pay such a sum for us? A hint of a smile touched his lips. Let's just say I couldn't stand by and watch three innocent women be separated and sold like chattel. I've got a ranch about 5 miles outside of town. It's not much, but there's plenty of room. You'll have a safe place to stay until you decide what you want to do next. Emma stepped forward. We don't have any money to pay you back, sir. I'm not asking for money, he said. "But I could use some help around the place. My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, isn't getting any younger, and the ranch keeps me busy enough." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "And that's all you want?" "Our help with housekeeping." Something flashed in the marshal's eyes, perhaps admiration for Sarah's boldness. "That's all. You'll have your own quarters, meals provided, and fair wages. I give you my word as an officer of the law, and as a man that no harm will come to any of you under my roof." Beth studied him carefully, searching for any sign of deception. She had learned the hard way that men's promises were often as substantial as prairie dust. But there was a steadiness to Grant McAllister that inspired trust she couldn't explain. "We accept your offer, Marshal," Beth said finally. "And we thank you." He nodded once. "I've got a wagon waiting. Gather whatever belongings you have, and we'll head to the ranch." The sisters had little to collect, just one trunk containing their mother's quilt, a few dresses, and the family Bible. Within the hour, they were traveling along a rutted dirt road, the town of Galesburg shrinking behind them. Beth sat next to the marshal on the wagon seat, her sisters in the back with their meager possessions. The countryside stretched around them, rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, fields of corn and wheat swaying in the summer breeze. "My father moved west after the war," Marshal McAllister said suddenly, breaking the silence. "He built the ranch from nothing. When he died 3 years ago, I took over. It's good land." Beth glanced at him. "You're the town marshal and a rancher?" He nodded. "Galesburg isn't large enough to keep a marshal busy full-time. I've got good hands who help with the cattle." "Our father was a banker," Beth offered. "After Mother died of typhoid, he changed, started drinking, gambling. We didn't know how bad things were until after he was gone." Grant's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your losses, Miss Mitchell." "Beth," she said. "Please call me Beth." As the wagon crested a hill, a sprawling ranch came into view. A large 2-story house stood proudly amid cottonwood trees, with a barn and several outbuildings nearby. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and horses nickered in a corral close to the house. "Welcome to Willow Creek Ranch," Grant said, a note of pride in his voice. For the first time since the auction block, Beth felt a glimmer of hope spark in her chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, this unexpected turn of events might lead somewhere better than the dark future she had feared. The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and an elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun emerged from the front door, wiping her hands on her apron. "About time you got back, Marshal," she called. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about dinner." Her eyes widened as she caught sight of the 3 young women in the wagon. Grant jumped down and offered Beth his hand. "Mrs. Abernathy, these are the Mitchell sisters, Beth, Emma, and Sarah. They'll be staying with us and helping around the ranch." Mrs. Abernathy's surprise quickly gave way to a warm smile. "Well now, isn't this a blessing? I've been telling the marshal for years this place needs some feminine touches. Come inside, dears. You must be exhausted after everything you've been through." As Beth accepted Grant's hand and stepped down from the wagon, their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the strange circumstances that had brought them together, and perhaps a shared wonder about what might come next. The house was larger than it appeared from outside, with a spacious kitchen, a comfortable sitting room, and several bedrooms upstairs. Mrs. Abernathy, who insisted they call her Martha, showed the sisters to a large room at the end of the hallway. "You girls can stay here for now," she said. "There are 2 other spare rooms if you'd prefer your own space, but I thought you might want to stay together at first." The room was clean and pleasant, with 3 beds, a wardrobe, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the distant mountains. "It's lovely," Emma said softly, running her hand over a patchwork quilt. Martha patted her shoulder. "Get settled in and then come down for supper." The Marshal always has a hearty appetite after a day in town. After Martha left, Sarah sat on one of the beds. Do you think we can trust him? Really trust him? Beth sighed, unpacking their mother's quilt. I don't know, but we didn't have many options, and he seems decent enough. He saved us, Emma pointed out. He could have bought just one of us if he had. Dishonorable intentions. Beth nodded. For now, we work hard and prove our worth. If anything changes, we'll face it together. The dinner that evening was the best meal the sisters had eaten in months. Martha had prepared roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Grant sat at the head of the table, his manner reserved but not unfriendly. Martha tells me you're good with medicines, Emma, he said as they ate. Emma blushed. I learned from our mother. She was a midwife before she married father. Grant nodded. That's a valuable skill out here. Dr. Pearson only comes through once a month. Sarah has a way with animals, Beth added, wanting both her sisters to be seen for their strengths. And she's the best rider of the three of us. Grant turned his attention to the youngest sister. Is that so? I could use help with the younger horses. Jenkins, my stable hand, is getting on in years. Sarah's eyes lit up. I'd be happy to help with the horses. And you, Beth? Grant asked, his gaze settling on her. What are your talents? Beth hesitated. I've managed our household since Mother died. Cooking, sewing, accounts. Whatever was needed. Something like respect flickered in Grant's eyes. A woman of many skills. Martha could use help with the house, and I've been wanting someone to help organize the ranch accounts. I can do that, Beth said, lifting her chin slightly. Later that night, as the sisters prepared for bed, Emma sat brushing her blonde hair. He seems kind, doesn't he? The Marshal. Kind enough to buy 3 women at auction, Sarah said, though her tone lacked its usual sharpness. Beth stood by the window, looking out at the star-filled sky. We'll see. For now, we have a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. That's more than we had yesterday. As she climbed into bed, Beth couldn't help wondering about the quiet, stern-faced Marshal who had inexplicably rescued them from a terrible fate. There was a story there, she was certain, and despite her caution, she found herself curious to uncover it. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the window and the distant sounds of ranch life already in full swing. Beth woke first, as was her habit, and dressed quickly in one of her simple cotton dresses. The kitchen was empty except for Martha, who was kneading bread dough with practiced hands. Good morning, dear, Martha said warmly. You're an early riser, I see. Beth smiled. Force of habit. May I help with breakfast? Martha gestured to a basket of eggs. The men will be hungry when they come in. The Marshal's been out since dawn. As Beth worked alongside Martha, she learned more about Willow Creek Ranch. Grant had inherited it from his father, a Civil War veteran who had come west seeking a fresh start. Besides cattle, the ranch raised horses that were known throughout the state for their quality. Grant had been Marshal of Galesburg for 5 years, but still managed to run the ranch with the help of several loyal hands. The Marshal's a good man, Martha said as she slid biscuits into the oven. Keeps to himself mostly, especially since Olivia. Beth's curiosity piqued. Olivia? Martha's expression grew somber. His fiancée. Died of fever 3 years back, right after his father passed. Nearly broke him completely. Threw himself into his work after that, the ranch and being Marshal. Rarely takes time for himself. Beth absorbed this information as she scrambled eggs in a cast-iron skillet. So the solemn Marshal carried his own sorrows. It explained something of the shadow she had sensed behind his eyes. The kitchen door swung open, and Grant entered, bringing with him the scent of morning air and horses. He'd removed his hat, and his hair was slightly damp with sweat. "Morning," he said, nodding to both women. His eyes lingered on Beth for a moment longer than necessary before he moved to wash his hands at the pump by the sink. "Your sister's not up yet?" he asked. "They'll be down soon," Beth replied. "They're not used to ranch schedules." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "They'll learn fast enough. Ranch life doesn't wait for late risers." As if on cue, Emma and Sarah appeared in the doorway, both looking slightly tousled but eager to begin their first full day at Willow Creek. Breakfast was a lively affair, with the ranch hands joining them at the long table. Beth observed the easy camaraderie between Grant and his men. Respect flowed both ways, she noted. The oldest hand, a weathered man named Tom Jenkins, had worked for Grant's father and treated the marshal almost like a son. After breakfast, Grant outlined their duties. Emma would help Martha with the household and learn about the medicinal herbs that grew on the property. Sarah would assist Jenkins with the horses, while Beth would divide her time between household management and helping Grant organize the ranch accounts. "The office is a mess," he admitted as he led Beth to a small room off the main parlor. "I'm not much for paperwork." The office was indeed cluttered, with stacks of invoices, letters, and ledgers covering every surface. Beth surveyed the chaos with a critical eye. "I can sort this out," she said with confidence. "My father might have been poor with money, but he taught me bookkeeping." Grant watched her as she began creating neat piles. "You're not what I expected, Beth Mitchell." She glanced up, meeting his steady gaze. "What did you expect, Marshal?" "Grant," he corrected. "Just Grant when we're not in town. And I'm not sure what I expected. Not someone so capable." Beth felt a flush rise to her cheeks at the unexpected compliment. "When you're responsible for your sister's welfare, you learn to be capable." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'll leave you to it, then. I've got to check the north pasture. Jenkins will show Sarah the stables, and Emma's already with Martha." After he left, Beth stood for a moment in the quiet room, thinking about the man who had saved them. There was more to Grant McAllister than the stern marshal or the successful rancher. Something in his manner, a gentleness beneath the strength, intrigued her. Shaking off these thoughts, she turned her attention to the task at hand. By midday, she had created a system for the papers, separating them by type and date. The ranch was larger and more profitable than she had initially assumed, with careful investment in quality breeding stock and smart contracts with army outposts and stage companies for horses. When Grant returned for the midday meal, he paused in the office doorway, surprise evident on his face at the transformation. "I've barely made a dent," Beth said, pushing a stray lock of chestnut hair behind her ear. "It's more than I've accomplished in months," he replied, genuine appreciation in his voice. "You have a gift for order." "Someone has to," she said with a small smile. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, something flickered between them, a spark of recognition, perhaps of kindred spirits beneath their different circumstances. The days fell into a rhythm at Willow Creek. The Mitchell sisters quickly proved their value, each in her own way. Emma's gentle manner and knowledge of healing plants made her indispensable when one of the ranch hands suffered a deep cut from a branding iron. Sarah's natural way with horses impressed even the skeptical Jenkins, who began teaching her more about training the spirited yearlings. And Beth brought order not only to the ranch accounts but to the household operations as well, freeing Martha from some of the heavier work that had become difficult for her aging bones. As June turned to July, the summer heat intensified. Beth found herself rising earlier each day, enjoying the peaceful moments before the ranch came fully to life. Often, she would find Grant already at work, checking fences or feeding livestock in the cool dawn hours. One such morning, nearly 3 weeks after their arrival, Beth was collecting eggs when she spotted Grant by the corral, working with a magnificent black stallion. She paused to watch him. His movements were confident but gentle, speaking softly to the horse as he ran his hands along its flank. "That's midnight," Martha said, appearing beside Beth with an empty basket. "Wildest yearling we've had in years. The Marshal's the only one who can handle him." Beth watched as Grant smoothly mounted the horse bareback. The stallion pranced nervously but didn't buck. "He has a way with them." "He has a way with most creatures that are hurt or scared," Martha said meaningfully. "Knows how to be patient." As if sensing their attention, Grant looked up and saw Beth watching. He guided the horse toward them, the animal moving with powerful grace across the yard. "Morning," he called, a genuine smile lighting his face. Beth had noticed his smiles coming more frequently these days, especially when he spoke with her. "He's beautiful," Beth said, admiring the glossy coat of the stallion. "And he knows it," Grant replied with a chuckle, patting the horse's neck. "Proud as a king, this one. Sarah's got her eye on him, but he's not ready for just anyone yet." "She'll win him over," Beth said confidently. "She's stubborn that way." Grant's expression grew thoughtful. "You've done a fine job with your sisters, Beth. They're exceptional young women." "They are," Beth agreed, warmth filling her at his recognition of her sister's worth. Martha discreetly slipped away, leaving them alone. Grant dismounted in one fluid motion and stood holding the stallion's lead rope, suddenly looking almost awkward. "There's a social in town on Saturday," he said after a moment. "The Independence Day celebration. I thought, perhaps you and your sisters might like to attend. It would be a chance to meet more folks from around the area." Beth hesitated. They had been to town only once since auction day, and the memory of standing on that block still filled her with shame. Grant seemed to read her thoughts. "People know you're working at my ranch now. No one would dare say a word against you or your sisters." There was a protective edge to his voice that stirred something in Beth's heart. "Thank you," she said. "I think we would like that." His smile returned, genuine and warm. "Good. We'll take the wagon in after morning chores." As he led the stallion back to the corral, Beth found herself watching his retreating figure longer than was proper. In the weeks since he had purchased their contracts, Grant McAllister had proven himself to be a man of integrity and kindness. He treated the sisters with respect, paid them fair wages as promised, and never once made Beth feel that they were indebted to him beyond their agreed-upon work. Yet something was changing between them. Subtle glances held a moment too long, conversations that stretched into the evening hours as they reviewed the ranch accounts together, the way his hand sometimes brushed hers when passing documents. Beth told herself it was gratitude she felt, nothing more, but in the quiet corners of her heart, she knew it was something deeper taking root. Saturday arrived clear and hot, with flags and bunting already visible on the distant buildings of Galesburg as the wagon approached town. Emma and Sarah chattered excitedly, wearing their best dresses freshly pressed for the occasion. Beth sat beside Grant on the wagon seat, acutely aware of his presence, the clean scent of soap and leather, the strength in his hands as he handled the reins. "Nervous?" he asked quietly, his eyes on the road ahead. Beth smoothed her skirt. "A little. The last time we were in town wasn't exactly pleasant." His jaw tightened. "That won't happen again. Not while I'm Marshal." The town square had been transformed for the celebration. Tables laden with food lined one side, while musicians tuned their instruments on a small platform. Children ran with sparklers despite the daylight hour, and red, white, and blue decorations hung from every available surface. As Grant helped Beth down from the wagon, she felt eyes turning their way. Whispers followed them as they moved through the crowd, but Grant's presence beside them and the silver star pinned to his vest seemed to discourage any open rudeness. "Marshal McAllister." Mayor Wilson approached, a portly man with an elaborate mustache and an overly hearty manner. "Good to see you, and with your house guests." His eyes raked over the Mitchell sisters with poorly disguised curiosity. "The Mrs. Mitchell are employees at my ranch," Grant said firmly. "Beth has reorganized my accounts so efficiently I might actually know how much money I have by year's end." His tone was light, but there was steel beneath it, a clear message that the sisters were under his protection. The mayor's smile faltered slightly. Of course. Ladies, welcome to our Independence Day celebration. Please enjoy yourselves." As the day progressed, Beth found herself relaxing. Emma was quickly drawn into conversation with several young women her age, while Sarah attracted attention from some of the local boys with her confident manner and ready wit. Grant stayed near Beth, introducing her to townspeople who treated her with cautious respect. "They're wondering if you're courting me," Beth observed quietly after an older couple walked away. Having scrutinized them with undisguised interest, Grant's eyebrows rose. "Does that bother you?" "Should it?" she countered, surprising herself with her boldness. A slow smile spread across his face. "I reckon not." Before he could say more, the band struck up a lively tune, and couples began forming for a dance. Grant hesitated, then held out his hand to Beth. "Would you do me the honor, Miss Mitchell?" Beth placed her hand in his. "I'd be delighted, Marshal McAllister." His hand was warm at her waist as he guided her through the steps of the dance. Though not a flashy dancer, Grant moved with the same quiet confidence he showed in all things, leading her smoothly around the makeshift dance floor. "You dance well for a man who spends his days on horseback," Beth remarked. "My mother's influence," he replied. "She insisted a gentleman should know how to dance properly." "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," he said, a shadow crossing his features. "Lost her when I was 16. Consumption." Beth's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry. It seems we've both had our share of loss." His eyes softened as they met hers. "Perhaps that's why we understand each other." The music changed to a slower waltz, and Grant drew her slightly closer. Beth was acutely aware of his proximity, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the strength in the arm that held her. "Beth," he began, his voice dropping lower so only she could hear. "I want you to know that well, look who's here, the marshal and his purchased woman." The harsh voice cut through the festive atmosphere. Grant stiffened, and Beth turned to see a tall man with a scraggly beard and bloodshot eyes standing at the edge of the dance area. He wore dusty clothes and had a gun belt slung low on his hips. "Farley," Grant said coldly, stepping slightly in front of Beth. "You're drunk. Go home before you do something you'll regret." The man sneered. "Everyone knows you bought those girls at auction. Playing the hero, weren't you? But we all know what men really want when they buy pretty young things." A hush fell over the gathering. Beth felt her face burning with humiliation. From across the square, she saw Emma and Sarah watching with wide, fearful eyes. Grant's hand moved to rest on his holstered pistol. "That's enough, Farley. Apologize to the lady and leave." Farley spat on the ground. "Lady? That's rich. Nothing but damaged goods, all three of them. Their daddy was a drunk and a cheat." And his words cut off abruptly as Grant's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling into the dust. The crowd gasped collectively. "I said apologize," Grant said, his voice dangerously quiet as he stood over the fallen man. Farley wiped blood from his lip, rage and alcohol making his face ugly. "You'll regret that, McAllister." He struggled to his feet and staggered away, cursing loudly. Grant turned to Beth, concern etched on his features. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "Yes, thank you." The music had stopped, and people were staring. Grant placed a protective hand at the small of Beth's back. I think it's time we headed home. Emma and Sarah quickly joined them, and they made their way back to the wagon in uncomfortable silence. The festive mood was thoroughly broken. As they rode out of town, Sarah finally spoke. Is it always going to be like that? People looking at us that way? Grant's grip tightened on the reins. No. People have short memories when it comes to gossip. They'll find something new to talk about soon enough. He didn't say anything that isn't true, Beth said quietly. You did buy us at auction. Grant turned to her, his expression intense. I purchased your contracts to save you from being separated. Not because he broke off, struggling to find the right words. Never because I viewed you as property. Beth saw the sincerity in his eyes and felt ashamed of her doubt. I know that now. They rode the rest of the way in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the ranch, the sisters headed inside while Grant saw to the horses. Later that evening, after Emma and Sarah had gone to bed, Beth found herself restless. She slipped downstairs and out onto the porch, where she found Grant sitting alone, staring out at the star-filled sky. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning. No. Beth settled into the chair beside him. I wanted to thank you for defending us today. He shook his head. You shouldn't have had to endure that. Farley's a troublemaker, always has been. But there are others who think the same, just aren't drunk enough to say it out loud. Why did you really buy our contracts, Grant? Beth asked suddenly, needing to hear the truth. He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed. I was in town that day to pick up supplies. Wasn't planning to attend any auction. But I saw the three of you standing there, looking so scared and yet so dignified. It reminded me of something my father used to say, that a man's character is judged by what he does when no one is watching. Except everyone was watching, and I couldn't just ride away. He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the silver moonlight. I had no expectations, Beth. I just knew I couldn't let you be separated. The rest you working here, us becoming. He paused, searching for the right word. Friends, Beth offered. A small smile touched his lips. Is that what we are? Beth's heart quickened. What would you call it? Instead of answering, Grant reached out slowly and took her hand in his. I care for you, Beth Mitchell. More than I expected to. More than might be proper, given the circumstances of how you came to be here. Beth looked down at their joined hands. I care for you too, and that terrifies me. Why? He asked gently. Because we were purchased, she said, voicing her deepest fear. How can I know if what I feel is real or just gratitude? How can you know if what you feel isn't just responsibility? Grant's thumb traced small circles on her palm. I felt responsible for many people in my life, Beth. This is different. Their eyes met, and Beth saw a vulnerability in his that matched her own. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, and she was surprised by how much she wanted him to. Instead, he released her hand and stood. It's getting late. We should both get some rest. Beth rose as well, oddly disappointed. Good night, Grant. As she turned to go inside, his voice stopped her. Beth, I want you to know that you and your sisters are free to leave anytime you choose. Your contracts were paid in full that day. You owe me nothing. The significance of his words washed over her. All this time she had been free to go, yet he had never mentioned it. He wanted her to stay because she chose to, not because she felt obligated. Thank you for telling me, she said softly before slipping inside, her heart and mind whirling with new possibilities. July gave way to August, bringing scorching days and the cattle drive season. Grant was away more often, overseeing the movement of his herds to market with his most experienced hands. The ranch felt emptier without his presence. though Beth kept busy managing the household and accounts. One sweltering afternoon, Beth was hanging laundry when she spotted a cloud of dust on the road leading to the ranch. Thinking it might be Grant returning earlier than expected, she shaded her eyes against the sun and watched as a single rider approached. It wasn't Grant. The man rode with a loose, almost lazy posture that contrasted with Grant's straight-backed dignity. As he drew closer, Beth recognized Farley, the drunk who had insulted them at the Independence Day celebration. Her stomach knotted with apprehension. "Sarah," she called to her sister, who was exercising one of the yearlings in the nearby corral. "Go inside and find Jenkins." Sarah took one look at the approaching rider and nodded, quickly dismounting and heading toward the barn where the old ranch hand was working. Farley rode up to the clothesline where Beth stood, a smirk playing on his lips. "Afternoon, Miss Mitchell. Marshal not around today." Beth lifted her chin. "He's due back any time. What do you want, Mr. Farley?" Farley dismounted, tying his horse to the fence post. "Just being neighborly. Thought I'd check on you ladies, seeing as you're all alone out here." His eyes traveled over Beth in a way that made her skin crawl. "We're well looked after," Beth said firmly. "The ranch hands are nearby." Farley took a step closer. "That old man Jenkins and the Mexican boy? Not much protection. McAllister shouldn't leave pretty things unguarded." Beth stood her ground, though her heart raced. "State your business or leave, Mr. Farley." He grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Always did like a woman with spirit. Makes it more interesting when they finally—" "That's far enough, Farley." Jenkins appeared from the barn, a shotgun resting casually in his arms. Sarah and Miguel, the young Mexican hand, flanked him. Farley's expression hardened, but he made no move toward his own weapon. "No need to get excited. Just having a friendly conversation." "Doesn't look friendly from here," Jenkins replied. "Miss Beth asked you to state your business." Farley shrugged with exaggerated nonchalance. "Tell McAllister I came by. Tell him Dallas Reed is back in the territory, and he's asking about him." His eyes narrowed. "Tell him Reed remembers what happened to his brother." With that cryptic message delivered, Farley untied his horse and mounted. "Be seeing you, Miss Mitchell," he called as he rode away, the threat in his voice unmistakable. "Who's Dallas Reed?" Beth asked Jenkins once Farley was out of earshot. The old man's weathered face looked troubled. "Bad business from before your time. His brother was a rustler. The marshal had to shoot him when he resisted arrest 3 years back. Dallas swore revenge, then disappeared. If he's back." Jenkins shook his head. "The marshal needs to know." That evening, when Grant returned, Beth recounted the visit from Farley and his message. Grant's expression grew grim as he listened. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," he said when she finished. "Farley's a coward, coming around when he knew I'd be gone." Jenkins seemed concerned about this Dallas Reed. Beth pressed. "Should we be worried?" Grant sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "Reed's all talk. If he wanted revenge, he's had 3 years to take it." But Beth noticed the way his hand unconsciously moved to check his pistol, and how his eyes scanned the darkening ranch yard beyond the windows. "Grant," she said quietly, "please don't dismiss this. I'm concerned for your safety." His expression softened at her worry. "I'll be careful, Beth, but I don't want you frightening your sisters over this. Most likely, Reed's just passing through, and Farley's trying to stir up trouble." Beth wanted to believe him, but something in his manner suggested he wasn't telling her everything. That night, as she lay in bed listening to her sister's steady breathing, she couldn't shake the feeling that danger was approaching Willow Creek Ranch. The next few days passed without incident, though Beth noticed Grant was more vigilant, checking the perimeter of the property each evening and instructing the hands to keep watch for strangers. He also spent more time in town, presumably investigating Reed's whereabouts. One afternoon, Beth was working in the garden with Emma when they heard the sound of approaching horses. They looked up to see Grant riding in with another man younger, with the bearing of a lawman but without a badge visible. "That's William Porter," Emma said, brushing soil from her hands. "He's a deputy marshal from Springfield. I met him at the social." The men dismounted and headed for the house. Beth and Emma followed, curious about this unexpected visitor. In the parlor, Grant made introductions. "Will's an old friend," he explained. "We served together as deputies before I came to Galesburg." Porter nodded politely to the sisters. "Ladies, I wish this was a social call, but I'm afraid I'm here on business. We've received word that Dallas Reed and his gang have been robbing stagecoaches across 3 counties. They're heading this way." Beth's eyes met Grant's. Farley's warning wasn't just talk then. Grant's expression was somber. "Seems not. Will's here to help track them down before they cause more trouble." "Or before they come after you," Beth said plainly, earning a sharp look from Grant. Porter glanced between them. "The lady's perceptive, Grant. Reed's made it clear it's personal. Last driver they robbed said Reed was asking specifically about you and your whereabouts." "Then you shouldn't be here," Sarah spoke up suddenly. "If they're looking for Grant, this is the first place they'll come." A heavy silence followed her words. Beth saw the conflict in Grant's eyes, the lawman's duty to pursue criminals warring with the rancher's instinct to protect his home and those who depended on him. "I won't bring trouble to your door," he said finally. "Will and I will head out tomorrow, try to intercept Reed before he gets any closer to Galesburg." "And leave us here?" Beth asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Jenkins and the other hands will stay," Grant assured her. "And I've sent word to the sheriff in the next county for additional protection." Beth wanted to argue further, but not in front of Porter. She excused herself to prepare dinner, her thoughts in turmoil. The idea of Grant riding out to face a dangerous criminal bent on revenge filled her with dread. In the months since coming to Willow Creek, he had become essential to her in ways she was only beginning to acknowledge. After dinner, when Porter had retired to the guest room and her sisters were upstairs, Beth found Grant in his office, cleaning his revolver by lamplight. "You can't go," she said without preamble. He looked up, his expression weary. "I have to, Beth. It's my job." "It's suicide," she countered. "This man wants revenge for his brother. He won't be satisfied until you're dead." Grant set the gun aside and stood, moving around the desk to stand before her. "I can't hide while Reed terrorizes innocent people. That's not who I am." "And who are you?" Beth demanded, emotions she'd kept tightly controlled suddenly spilling over. "A lawman? A rancher? A man who buys women at auction to save them, then rides off to get himself killed." His eyes darkened at her words. "That's not fair, Beth. None of this is fair." She was trembling now, tears threatening despite her best efforts to suppress them. "I didn't ask to stand on that auction block. I didn't ask to come here and care about you. But here we are, and now you want to ride off toward a bullet with your name on it." Grant's expression softened, and he reached out to take her hands in his. "Beth," he said gently, "I'm coming back." "You can't promise that," she whispered, her anger giving way to the fear beneath it. "No," he agreed, "but I can promise that I have more reason to return now than I've had in a very long time." His gaze held hers, and in it she saw everything he hadn't said aloud, that he cared for her deeply, that what had begun as an act of decency had become something neither of them had anticipated. "Grant," she began, not even sure what she wanted to say. He released her hands to cup her face gently. "I should have done this weeks ago. he murmured, and then he was kissing her. His lips were warm and firm against hers, the kiss beginning tentatively and growing more certain as she responded. Beth felt herself melting into him, her hands gripping the front of his shirt, as though to anchor herself against the rush of emotions. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly. Grant rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the Independence Day dance," he admitted. Beth smiled despite her lingering fear. "What took you so long, Marshal?" "Respect. Uncertainty. The fact that I bought your contract and didn't want you to feel obligated." She pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "I stopped feeling obligated months ago, Grant McAllister. Now I just feel—" "What?" he prompted when she hesitated. "Like I found something I wasn't looking for. Something I might not be able to bear losing." He kissed her again, more briefly this time. "Then understand why I have to go. Why I have to end this threat to us. To whatever this is becoming between us." Beth sighed, knowing she couldn't dissuade him. It was the very sense of duty she admired in him that was driving him to face this danger. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," he said solemnly, sealing the vow with another kiss. Morning came too quickly. Beth rose early to prepare provisions for Grant and Porter's journey, her movements mechanical as she fought to maintain her composure. Her sisters, sensing her distress, helped quietly, their own faces reflecting concern. Grant and Porter were checking their saddles when Beth brought out the packed food. The day was already growing hot, the August sun beating down mercilessly. 3 days' worth of food," Beth said, handing the bundle to Grant. "Though I expect you back sooner." He smiled, tucking the provisions into his saddlebag. "Yes, madam." Porter discreetly moved away, giving them a moment of privacy. Grant took Beth's hands in his. "I meant what I said last night," he told her quietly. "I'm coming back." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He leaned down and kissed her gently, not caring who might see. When he pulled away, his eyes were filled with a promise that needed no words. Beth stood with her sisters and watched as the two men rode away, dust rising behind their horses as they disappeared down the road toward town. "He'll be all right," Emma said, slipping her arm around Beth's waist. "He's too stubborn not to be." Beth hoped she was right. The alternative was too painful to contemplate. The first day passed slowly, each hour dragging as Beth tried to focus on the ranch's routine. She checked the accounts, helped Martha with preserving the summer vegetables, and inventoried the root cellar, but her thoughts remained with Grant. As evening approached, an unexpected visitor arrived, Dr. Pearson, the traveling physician who served the outlying ranches. "Just making my monthly rounds," he explained as Martha welcomed him inside. "Thought I'd check on old Jenkins's rheumatism while I'm here." Beth was grateful for the distraction. The doctor stayed for dinner, entertaining them with stories from his travels and news from neighboring communities. It was only as he was preparing to leave that he mentioned something that caught Beth's attention. "Strange business in Oak Ridge," he said, referring to a settlement some 20 miles away. "Stagecoach robbed yesterday. Driver said the bandits were asking about Marshal McAllister. You might want to let him know when he returns." Beth and her sisters exchanged alarmed glances. "Actually, the marshal is away pursuing those very bandits," Beth explained. "Their leader has a personal grudge against him." Dr. Pearson frowned. "Well, that's concerning." The driver said there were 5 men in the gang, all armed to the teeth. If McAllister's gone after them with just 1 deputy. He didn't need to finish the thought. Beth felt ice form in her stomach. Grant and Porter were outnumbered and possibly riding into a trap. After the doctor left, Beth paced the parlor, her mind racing. "We need to warn them," she said finally. "How?" Sarah asked. We don't know where they've gone. Oak Ridge, Beth said decisively. If Reed robbed a stagecoach there yesterday, that's where Grant and Deputy Porter would head once they heard about it. You can't be thinking of going after them, Emma said, alarm in her voice. Beth met her sister's gaze steadily. Not alone. Jenkins can escort us. Us? Sarah raised an eyebrow. I'm not leaving you two here unprotected, Beth insisted. We'll all go to town and inform Sheriff Blake. He can send men to warn Grant. The plan decided, Beth asked Jenkins to prepare the wagon for an early morning departure. She spent a restless night, torn between worry for Grant and determination to help him any way she could. They set out at dawn, the wagon rattling along the dusty road toward Galesburg. Jenkins drove while the sisters sat behind, scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. The town was just coming to life when they arrived, shopkeepers opening their doors and a few early risers moving along the boardwalks. Beth directed Jenkins to the sheriff's office, her heart sinking when she saw it was dark and empty. He must be out on patrol, Jenkins said, helping the sisters down from the wagon. Beth bit her lip in frustration. We'll try the mayor's office. He'll know where to find the sheriff. As they crossed the town square, Beth noticed a crowd gathering outside the telegraph office. A boy was posting a message on the bulletin board, and people were reading it with excited expressions. What's happening? She asked a woman on the edge of the crowd. Stage robbery foiled, the woman replied eagerly. Marshal McAllister and Deputy Porter caught the Reed gang red-handed trying to rob the Galesburg-bound stage this morning. All the bandits captured or killed. Relief washed over Beth so powerfully that she had to grip Sarah's arm for support. Grant is safe? The marshal is unharmed? She pressed. The woman nodded. That's what the telegram says. They're bringing the prisoners in later today. Beth turned to her sisters, a smile breaking across her face. He's all right. Of course he is, Sarah said, squeezing her hand. Didn't he promise? They decided to wait in town for Grant's return. Jenkins suggested the hotel dining room where they could rest and get something to eat after their early journey. The sisters had just settled at a table when commotion erupted in the street shouts and the sound of horses at a gallop. Beth rushed to the window, her heart leaping at the sight of Grant riding at the head of a group of men. Behind him, Porter and two other lawmen escorted 3 prisoners, their hands bound and expressions sullen. Without a word to her sisters, Beth hurried outside. Grant saw her immediately, his eyes widening in surprise. He quickly dismounted and strode toward her, removing his hat. Beth, what are you doing in town? We came to warn you, she explained breathlessly. Dr. Pearson told us about the robbery in Oak Ridge, and that Reed had 5 men. We were afraid you were outnumbered. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You rode all this way to warn me? Of course I did, she said simply. A smile spread slowly across his face. I told you I'd come back. Yes, but I wasn't willing to risk you breaking that promise. Before he could respond, Porter approached, leading a particularly angry-looking prisoner, a man with dark hair and a scar across one cheek who Beth assumed must be Dallas Reed. Marshal, Porter said, need you to sign the arrest papers before we take these men to the jail. Grant nodded. I'll be right there. He turned back to Beth. Wait for me at the hotel? This won't take long. Beth rejoined her sisters, her heart lighter than it had been in days. Emma and Sarah didn't tease her about the glow in her cheeks or the smile she couldn't suppress. They simply shared knowing glances and ordered another pot of coffee. An hour later, Grant entered the dining room, his expression weary but relieved. He sat down at their table, accepting the coffee Emma poured for him. It's over, he said. Reed and his men will stand trial next month. The circuit judge is already on his way. What happened? Sarah asked eagerly. How did you capture them? Grant took a sip of coffee before answering. We tracked them to a camp outside Oak Ridge. They were planning to rob the Galesburg stage at Copper Creek Pass. We got there first and set up an ambush with the help of some rangers who were in the area. Were you in danger? Beth asked quietly. His eyes met hers. For a moment, Reed had a clear shot at me, but Porter saw him and fired first. Reed's wounded, but he'll live to face the judge. Beth shuddered at how close it had been. And now, Grant said, reaching across the table to take her hand, I'd like to escort you ladies home, to Willow Creek. The way he said home made Beth's heart swell with emotion. It was true the ranch had become home to her and her sisters in a way their father's house in town never had been after their mother died. As they rode back to the ranch that afternoon, Beth beside Grant on the wagon seat and her sisters behind them, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The danger was past, at least for now, and the future stretched before them with new possibilities. That evening, after dinner, Grant asked Beth to walk with him in the garden. The air was cooler now, the day's heat giving way to a pleasant summer night. Fireflies danced among the rosebushes Martha tended so carefully, and the scent of late blooming flowers hung in the air. I've been thinking, Grant said as they strolled along the gravel path, about the day I bought your contracts. Beth glanced at him. What about it? I told myself I was just doing what was right, that any decent man would have done the same. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But the truth is, from the moment I saw you standing there so proud despite everything, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not since Olivia died. Beth's breath caught in her throat. What was that? He stopped walking to face her, taking both her hands in his. Hope, the sense that life might still hold something wonderful, something unexpected. Grant, she whispered, her heart racing. I know it hasn't been long, he continued, and the circumstances of how we met were unusual, but these past months have shown me what kind of woman you are, Beth Mitchell. Strong, intelligent, loving, fiercely protective of your sisters. I find myself wondering what it would be like to have that fierce heart on my side. For good. Beth could hardly believe what she was hearing. Are you? I'm asking if you might consider staying. Not as an employee. Not because of any contract. He took a deep breath. As my wife. Joy surged through Beth so powerfully she felt lightheaded. Are you proposing to me, Marshal McAllister? A smile lit his face. I believe I am, Miss Mitchell. Rather poorly, it seems. Beth laughed, tears of happiness springing to her eyes. On the contrary, I think it's the most perfect proposal a woman who was once sold at auction could hope for. His expression sobered. You'll never be sold or owned again, Beth. Not by me or anyone. I'm asking for a partnership. Equal in all things. Yes, she said simply. Yes. Grant's eyes widened slightly, as though he hadn't expected her to agree so readily. Yes, I'll marry you, Beth confirmed, her smile radiant in the moonlight. On one condition. Name it, he said without hesitation. My sisters stay with us, for as long as they choose. They're my family, and I promised we'd stay together. Grant's response was to pull her into his arms. They're my family now too, he said before lowering his mouth to hers in a kiss that sealed their agreement more completely than any contract ever could. The wedding took place in late September, when the summer heat had given way to the golden warmth of early autumn. Willow Creek Ranch was transformed for the occasion, with wildflowers and ribbons decorating the yard and tables set up beneath the cottonwood trees. It seemed the entire town of Galesburg turned out for the event. The same townspeople who had once witnessed Beth and her sisters on the auction block now came to celebrate a new beginning. Emma and Sarah stood beside Beth as she exchanged vows with Grant. their faces reflecting her happiness. Martha had sewn Beth a simple but elegant wedding dress from ivory silk ordered specially from St. Louis, and Grant wore a new suit that made him look every inch the successful rancher rather than the town marshal. As they spoke their promises before the traveling preacher, Beth felt the last shadows of her past lifting away. The shame of the auction block, the fear of separation from her sisters, the uncertainty of their future all faded in the light of Grant's steady gaze and the community that now surrounded them with acceptance. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with dancing and feasting and laughter filling the ranch yard. Beth danced with her new husband beneath the stars, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Happy, Mrs. McAllister?" Grant asked as he twirled her around the makeshift dance floor. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied truthfully. As they paused in their dancing, Beth spotted Emma deep in conversation with Deputy Porter, who had returned for the wedding. The young man was gazing at her sister with unmistakable admiration, and Emma's cheeks were flushed in a way that suggested the feeling might be mutual. Nearby, Sarah was demonstrating to some of the younger ranch hands how she had trained Midnight, the once wild stallion now responding to her commands with impressive precision. At 18, her youngest sister was blossoming into a confident young woman with a genuine gift for working with horses. "They're finding their places too," Grant observed, following Beth's gaze. "Yes," she agreed, "though I suspect Emma might be contemplating a move to Springfield if Will Porter has anything to say about it." Grant chuckled. "He's a good man. She could do worse." As the evening grew later, the newlyweds bid farewell to their guests and retreated to the privacy of what was now their shared bedroom. Grant had expanded the master suite, connecting it to his office to create a private sanctuary for them both. Later, as Beth lay in her husband's arms, the moonlight streaming through the curtains, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. From the humiliation of the auction block to the dignity of becoming mistress of Willow Creek Ranch, it was a transformation she could never have imagined that terrible day in June. "What are you thinking about?" Grant asked, his fingers gently combing through her loose hair. "About fate," she replied. "How sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I thank God every day that I was in town that morning." "As do I," Beth murmured, nestling closer to him, "though I'm quite certain I would have found a way to keep my sisters together somehow." "I believe you would have," he agreed with a smile. "You're the strongest woman I know, Beth McAllister." The name still sounded new and wonderful to her ears. "I love you," she said simply. His arms tightened around her. "And I love you, now and always." As autumn gave way to winter and then to spring, life at Willow Creek Ranch settled into a new rhythm. Beth managed both the household and the ranch accounts with efficient grace, while Grant divided his time between marshal duties and ranching. Emma's friendship with Deputy Porter blossomed into courtship, and by Christmas, they were engaged to be married the following spring. Sarah continued to develop her skill with horses, eventually starting a breeding program for the ranch that promised to make Willow Creek famous throughout the territory for its fine stock. When Beth discovered she was expecting their first child, due in the summer of 1878, the joy that filled the ranch was palpable. Grant became even more protective, though he was careful not to smother her independence, a balance they had worked to maintain throughout their marriage. "A baby," he marveled one evening as they sat on the porch, his hand resting gently on her growing belly. "Our own family beginning." "Our family began the day you said you'd take all three of us," Beth corrected him with a smile. "This little one is just the newest member." The baby, a boy they named James after Grant's father, arrived on a warm June day almost exactly 1 year after Beth had stood trembling on the auction block. As she held her son in her arms, Grant beside her with wonder in his eyes, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed. "He's perfect," Grant whispered, touching the infant's tiny hand. "He is," Beth agreed. "And he'll grow up knowing his father is a man of honor who believes in doing what's right, no matter the cost." Grant's eyes met hers, filled with love and gratitude. "And that his mother is the bravest woman in Illinois, who never gave up fighting for her family." 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, and in time, 2 more sons joined the family. Emma married Deputy Porter and moved to Springfield but visited often. Sarah eventually took over the horse breeding program entirely, her reputation spreading far beyond Galesburg. She never married, preferring her independence and the satisfaction of building something entirely her own. As the years passed and Willow Creek Ranch prospered, Beth sometimes thought back to that desperate day on the auction block. The memory no longer brought shame, only gratitude for the man who had seen 3 frightened women and chosen not to look away. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, James, now 10 and as tall as his age, their daughter Elizabeth teaching her younger brothers how to catch fireflies, Beth reached for Grant's hand. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" she asked. Grant squeezed her fingers gently. "Every day. And I thank God for whatever prompted me to attend that auction." Beth leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment warming her more surely than the summer sunset painting the sky before them. "I still remember the exact words you said. I'll take all 3 and keep you together." "Best decision I ever made," Grant said simply. And as they watched their children laughing in the golden evening light, surrounded by the life they had built together, Beth knew it had been the best decision for her too to trust this man, to build a life with him, to transform what had begun as a simple act of decency into a love story neither of them could have imagined on that dusty auction block so many years ago. The auction that had seemed like an ending had, in fact, been just the beginning.